Well, hello there, gentlemen. Fancy meeting you here.
And we have to stop meeting like this. People will start talking.
We want them to talk. That's kind of the point, Josh.
Let's
Do you know how this works?
How about take?
There you go. All right.
It's that time again. It's time for a tasty, tainty treat.
It's time to duel.
I think that was like one too many Diz, but I haven't watched the show in like 1,000 years, so you know.
Well, it's Yu-Gi-Oh with an additional stutter.
There we go.
I figured out how to do something.
It's Yu-Gi-Oh buffering. What is happening?
I'm gonna see if it works. Okay.
Oh God, what are you doing?
How was that? Did you guys
Oh, it
hear
was
it?
fantastic.
Did you hear it?
I didn't hear anything.
My penis definitely Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Oh, stop.
What sound were we supposed to hear?
You're the chosen one. But Ron, what if I can't get it up?
Leviosa.
Harry Potter
what are
is
you
the
doing?
chosen Juan.
Harry Potter.
I am Harry Potter. I am the chosen Juan.
The chosen Juan. Hey,
Anyway, before we
time
get
for our
ourselves in trouble.
accent series.
Hi, everybody. We are the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast, not, as you might have guessed, a Harry Potter-based podcast.
And today we're speedrunning getting canceled for accent impression.
Indeed. No, today we actually have a pretty interesting topic that we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is kind of funny because, like, I think the last 3 episodes we haven't done any like background breakdowns or anything like that, because we just have so much freaking cool stuff that we've come up with to talk about, and other people have helped us with coming up to talk about and things like that, and just metaphysics and craziness and questions that we have. And so again, this is another one of those. We're very excited about it. It's gonna be cool. But before we get to that, we have a handful of things to talk about. Let's give them something to talk about. First being, this is the Black Tower Podcast, which means that if you want to know all that there is to know about the Black Tower Podcast, you should go to blacktowerpod.com. It's going to have almost all of the information that you need about the Black Tower Podcast. But there is one thing that isn't really on the Black Tower Pod website, or that's a little buried, and that is who the actual light we are. So, to fill you in on that, I am your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel.
I am your Bajan Mahale, Andrew.
I am your Sorovan Mahale, Josh.
Josh was our Frozone Mahale for just a moment.
Shoot, am I frozen?
No, you aren't anymore, but you were for a second on my screen.
Oh, I didn't know if he was frozen or if he was just like, I'm not going second, Andrew. Fucking say your line.
That's also possible. Who knows? It's Josh. He's the
wild card.
But yeah, so now that you know who we are, go to blacktowerpod.com, check it out, have fun, do the thing, and then after you're done checking that out, on our homepage, there is a little chibi down at the bottom that is wearing a Indiana Jones fedora and is holding a pickaxe and looks like they're about to go rock hounding for cool stuff and gems and rocks and crystals and fossils and just literally almost anything that you could get out of the earth. You can click on that chibi and go over to the Crystal Barista and check out all of those things I just mentioned, whether they be mystical stones that are going to help you kill it in life, whether that be fossils that you think look dope and remind you that evolution is real, or any of a number of other things that you can get out of checking out earthly curated accoutrement. So definitely go ahead and check out the Crystal Barista. She is an official sponsor of the Black Tower podcast, and she does amazing work both in her own store as well as with us. We are always grateful for the Crystal Barista, and you should be too. And to help show that, go check that shit out.
New cool thing she's doing on Tuesday nights. Weird. She's doing wholesale live streams on her Facebook page.
Nice.
Please tell me it's like the old like shop network commercials that you'd wake up to at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Please. You know how many times I almost bought massive collections of knives and swords that surely would break in 5 seconds from those? Oh, it's a great deal. You get 537 pieces of sharpened steel for only $95. I'm like, it's got to be quality.
For 3 payments of $29.95, this 28 set of knives can be yours.
Oh, the Home Shopping Network. That's what it was called. Yeah.
Yeah, the Home Shopping.
Why go online and search and buy what you want online whenever you could just call this number and talk to somebody?
Awesome. So yeah, go check out the Crystal Barista. Please have, for all of us who are technologically advanced, have up on one monitor the Discord to listen to our live streams of our episodes, and then on one monitor have the Facebook page for the Crystal Barista open, and check out both at the same time. Intake the content of crystals and Wheel of Time into your face hole in all of the different ways, because why not? That's what new technology and advancement and being awesome is all about. So there you go. Now, before we get into anything else, we want to make sure that you're protected. We are Ashaman. That is our goal. That is our fight. That is what we do. We protect you.
Ashaman.
That's awesome. But seriously, no.
That's our what idol entry for the year.
Oh, that's actually really good. I love that. Awesome. But seriously, we want to protect you from mental illness. We want to protect you from people who are doing you wrong. We want to protect you from the Dark One. We want to protect you from taint. We want to protect you from spoilers. And that's the one we gonna take care of right now. So, Andrew, if you could set up the people with that spoiler condom, make sure it goes on real tight so that we don't have any problems, because an Ashaman's work is never done until everybody goes home and goes to sleep safe.
I will, but I just also had another idea. Remember those J.G. Wentworth commercials?
Oh, God.
Should definitely do one that's like, if you have long-term madness, but you need Andorran crowns now.
Yes, I love it. I'm in. Let's
go. All right.
Call Black Tower Ashaman.
Welcome to the Black Tower, a Wheel of Time podcast. All right, let's check this one. This podcast will likely be spoiling books 1 through... Oh, what's this? An envelope addressed to me. No name, though. Let's see what's inside. Oh my. This podcast will likely spoil all the books in the series, and apparently being a Patreon will expose you to information that should be left unseen. Protect yourself by pulling that spoiler condom all the way on. And I need a drink. That's way more of Andrew than I have ever wanted to see. Why would you braid it down there?
The better question is, why don't you?
Yes, exactly. Also, I just want to throw out there, for all of you who do not know, who might be listening at the moment, that was our illustrious fact checker, Mahale. checking in on us to make sure that we have all of our listeners protected. And also, I just want to throw out there, since he lives, well, he moved here first. So since I live near him now, he may be getting additional envelopes in the next few months. So stay tuned. We're all good. But now that we have your attention and your curiosity and you're protected,
and I've let my hair down.
He has. I know, right? Now that we've done all of that, we have to tell you what it is that we are speaking of this evening. Now, for those of you who know us, we like to get deep into the Wheel of Time. This book series has so much world building. This book series has so much exciting stuff going on and so much information that you get all the time. Some of it is really well fleshed out. It is. You kind of know what's going on with Rand from basically the beginning to end. You do. Now, there are a few questionable moments, like the pipe at the end. There are a few questionable moments about, other characters, about what they were doing during certain times and blah, blah, blah. But during the story, we get a lot of information about certain human beings. Great. That's amazing. I want to know everything that they're doing. Are they putting their pants on like everybody else, one leg at a time? Are they using the power to put on their pants one leg at a time? I don't know. Let's figure it out. But there are a lot of people that we don't get a shit ton of information about. And one of those groups that is mentioned pretty regularly, but that we get very little information on, is Lews Therin and his 100 companions. Hell, we're not even 100% sure if there were 100 of them. Or was it Lews Therin and 100 companions, so it was 101? Or was it Lews Therin and 99 companions that made 100? Was the 100 companions a 100% exclusive Aes Sedai group? Or were there other people who just were cool dudes or cool ladies who were part of the 100 companions that couldn't channel? That one's probably not true. I'm pretty sure that everybody in the 100 companions could channel, and it sounds like almost all of them were male, which we may talk about later. But for now,
is the 100 companions a literal 100 companions, or is it like the 300 Spartans where there were actually like 10,000 of them?
Oh, not that great of disparity. There were 113. Yeah, there was 113 members of the 100 companions.
Yep, exactly. And this is the stuff we're going to go into tonight. We are talking about the 100 companions. We're going deep into.
We're going to talk about the 113 companions.
Yes, right.
And we're going to deep dive into that. We're going to get a little bit of just general information about them that is sort of known. It is known. We're going to get a little bit of information about things that we think. We're going to get a little bit of information about what we disagree on, what we agree on, what is easily found. And then we're going to get a little metaphysical with some of these questions about things that we know to be true in the Wheel of Time. And yet, the 100 companions seem to kind of break the rules on that. So we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff on this episode. It's going to be fun. Let's dive into it right away, because it sounds like Andrew has some information for us as far as having some resources available. Andrew, tell us a little bit about sort of the stats on the 100 companions. Anything that we know from the wiki, from the books, from anywhere. What do we know about the 100 companions as far as just like numbers and proliferation and things like that?
Oh, yeah, sure. So like I said earlier, the 100 companions is only slightly misleading in name. There were 113. If you're rounding based on math, it's accurate for rounding.
Yes.
Which, yeah. But these were all male Aes Sedai. It was an all-male Aes Sedai unit or group of individuals from the Age of Legends. And they were very strong supporters of Lews Therin Telamon, but chiefly more than just supporting Lews Therin, they very vocally supported Lews Therin's plan of attacking the boar directly and trying to repair the seal on the Dark One's prison. Which is an important detail because it allows us to extrapolate. This wasn't just like Lews Therin and the Poon posse that walked around all of the Second Age. This was a group of individuals that wouldn't have even become a group until after the bore was drilled in the first place. So it's like a political faction of support that rose up after the bore was drilled. Now they seem to be actually a reactionary formation, not just to the forming of the bore, but to another all-female group of Aes Sedai that was led and loyal to Latra Pasei Dekumi, which I'm hoping I'm saying right, and I guarantee I'm not.
You're saying it as right as anyone else.
Let's go with that. I'm just going to stay Latra for the future. I'm not going to go with even the last name is really cool, Dekumi.
Dekumi.
But
is French, also known as Garianan.
Yeah. But Latra's group was actually known as the Fateful Concord. This was the all-female group that supported waiting until the Choden Call were built and using that to deal with the problem. And Lews Therin was like, I like the way you think, except I don't. It's going to take too long.
I like the way you work it. No Choden Call.
Yeah.
Gotta back it up.
Well,
yeah. So this all came to a head.
We'll talk about that in a second, Josh.
Yeah.
Keep going, Andrew.
The two groups came to a head against each other in the Hall of Servants, where ultimately, like all disputes should go whenever you can't say anything nice, they decided to just do their own thing, which mainly was Lews Therin saying, y'all can keep talking, I'm going to go do something. And the 100 companions and 10,000 soldiers left and went to Shao Ghul to try to seal the Dark One's prison. And we know what happened there with the anchoring of the 7 sails made of Quendiar. Of this group, we don't know how many died in the conflict necessarily, but we do know that 68 of those that did survive the actual conflict went mad instantly.
yes.
And thus goes the breaking of the world from there.
Yep. Cool. All right, so now I want to touch on something that was brought up there that I would like your thoughts on. I will start by giving mine just to sort of give you an example of what I'm looking for here. We know, because hindsight is 2020.
Yes, my butt can see in 2020.
Yeah, there you go. But since hindsight is 2020, we know that this particular thing that they did went real bad. Real bad. Now, on one hand, to be fair, they did actually have a backup and implemented it, and it was not nearly as bad as their first shot. But their first plan got real fucky-wucky real fast, and a lot of people ended up in a forever box. So, bad.
Oh no.
Right? We don't know whether actually going ahead and using both halves of the true source, or the one power, especially aided by the Choden Call, would have actually worked, but we do have a small window into that at the end of the Third Age, where Rand uses 3 different powers, 2 different powers, depending on how you want to look at it, where he uses both halves of the one power and also the true power to actually seal the Dark One away. Now, again, impossible to say, given the information that Robert Jordan gives us, whether that's a perfect seal, or whether it's just another stopgap, or whether it's just a better stopgap, but still not perfect. Who knows? It's hard to say. Everybody has their theories. We're not going to go into that. right now. But I have a question as far as I think that using the Chodan call and both halves of the one power would still have gone just as badly if their goal was to destroy the Dark One, which seemed like what their goal was at the beginning as far as what Lews Therin wanted to do with it. And in fact, I surmise that if they had been using both halves of the one power and the Chodan call, everything would have gotten that much more fucky-wucky if their goal had been to destroy the Dark One. So, and given what we know about Lews Therin, I would say that he likely would not have backed down from trying to destroy the Dark One, at least at first. And that they would have just been maybe slightly more perfect seals with both halves of the one power after he tried to go ahead and kill the Dark One and make things a lot more fucky-wucky. But I would like to get your thoughts on it. The two questions. Number one, do you think anyone would have actually been able to convince Lews Therin, who they still likely would have had as the figurehead here, even if they had been using both halves of the power? Do you think Lews Therin would have actually been convinced to not try and destroy the Dark One from the beginning? And question two, do you think it actually would have been successful if they had only been using both halves of the one power, but hadn't tried to use the true power as well? Andrew, I'm going to ask you first.
Well, I gave the long breakdown and you laid it out. So if you don't mind,
That's
I'm actually going to defer to Josh because I don't want his tongue to get like too stiff.
So here's
Oh.
That's
so
fair.
here's the thing. I will say, in reading about this very topic, because I'll admit I don't know a lot about the 100 Companions, and
Mhm.
I have made some pretty bold statements to the tune of, hey, I think you guys are being a little bit too hard on Lews Therin. I don't, he was acting in desperation. Nobody
Yep.
else had any plans of action. Nobody
Yep.
else had anything ready to go in the hopper. And I'm actually kind of needing to step that back a little bit, because once again, and again, we know all this is, conjecture. And
Yes.
some of this is confirmed by Robert Jordan. Some of this is, confirmed by Team Jordan later.
Mhm.
But for the most part, a lot of this comes from a position of, hey, we have a very broken history that we're hailing back to. And in this case, Andrew mentioned the fateful Concord, which was led by Latra Lucé de Cunay.
Mhm.
Which fun story, she was depicted in the TV show. She was the lady that was arguing with Lews Therin in the opening of episode 8.
Yes.
Who they
I
then
won't-
called the Tamerlane.
I
Correct.
won't delve too much into that because we're going to do some TV episode breakdowns, and we'll talk a lot about that, I'm sure.
Sure.
But the point being, in the TV show, it's sort of represented as this like argument between one person and one person.
Mhm.
No, we have to do this. Can't you imagine if we could do this? No, we can't do it. We can't. It's folly. It's arrogance. No, but if we did it, we could do it. And of course, they're speaking the old tongue, so they're like, and
Why
it's
does
great.
your old tongue sound almost exactly like Twi'lek?
Look?
I'm just
Or
waiting
actually,
for the-
the rules,
Huddies.
okay?
Actually, Huddies, if we're being honest. It's a Twi'lek speaking it, but it's Huddies.
I'm just waiting for the demon to pop up in the background.
Right?
so,
But continue.
but
Sorry.
I will say, in like I said, in reading about this, I'm actually kind of walking that plan back. Now, not entirely. I'm still not entirely willing to say Lews Therin is an arrogant prick and should be excoriated throughout the ages. Because the plan was, Latra's plan was, wait for the completion of the Chodan call And then with the combined power of the Choden Call, men and women would stand together to form what they believe would be a complete seal on the board.
Mm-hmm.
The original plan was to put a barrier around the board and then seal it as they have time to. Now, we obviously don't know. The only fact in this particular exposition here is that the Choden Call were still under construction. They had not been completed. Okay. So let's look at it from, and I'll straight up say it, a male perspective. A male perspective is, we have to do something. We have to do something. We can't just sit around and talk about it and wait for something else to come along. We can't depend on something we do not know is a sure bet. And I believe the arrogance comes in, and like I said, I'm walking back a little bit, and I do think there was some arrogance played to this, because I think the arrogance happens with Lews Therin and Latra Decume debating, open political debate and discourse. And Latra essentially says, this is not, we're not doing this. We will not participate in this. And the reason why the 100 companions were all men is because Latra's argument, Latra's position was so well received with female Aes Sedai that even women who didn't have the channeling ability requisite for participating in the links to actually do the thing, even those women were siding with Latra and saying, no, you can't do this. We have to wait for the Choden Call. We have to put this plan into action and do this. And Lews Therin was like, not good enough. I'm not going to wait for it. I'm going. And that, to me, is a much more compelling story. My guess is they didn't do that in Wheel of Time because, again, in the TV show, because, again, COVID restraints, recasting, and showing a big Senate scene. Maybe showrunners can confirm, was there more to that scene, or was that it? Was that the scene? But I can imagine how, shooting a big like Senate scene where there's an open debate and people are kind of yelling back and forth. I can imagine how that'd be problematic during the COVID lockdown.
The Senate.
And I was just going to go there. Also, Rafe did say very clearly he did not want to rely on themes and tropes listed in other fantasy and sci-fi series. So I can imagine the callback to episode 2 may have been a little too close. And so they wanted something that was a little bit more unique, a little bit less. Yeah, that one. Well, episodes 1, 2, and 3, really. There's lots of Senate debate in the prequels.
Yes.
So to answer your question, what were the 2 questions again? I just
number one was do you think that anyone could have convinced Lews Therin to not try and destroy the Dark One from the beginning and actually go ahead and just start with the plan of imprisoning? And if that had happened, well, no, actually, not if that had happened. Based on your answer from 1, do you think it would have worked, whatever it is that you think could have been convinced? Do you think it would have worked if they had used both halves and or the Choden Call?
So I'm actually going to get a little interesting here. I don't think Lews Therin's plan was to kill the Dark One. I don't think that was his plan. I think his plan all along was to seal the bore and banish the Dark One so that they could reestablish balance in their world and power could balance back in favor of the light. Now, the reason I posit this, and this is again heavy spoilers for A Memory of Light. Again, we know that Rand at the end used Saidin, Saidar, and the True Source to eventually create the perfect seal, to actually repair perfectly, that we know of,
Yeah.
the board.
Yeah.
Now, I think that Lews Therin had this plan to seal it. I think the plan was always to seal it. And I think he got tired of waiting around for the Chosen Call to be finished and for the rest of the female Aes Sedai to sign on and go help.
Okay.
And I think, and so I got kind of two facets to this. Is one, yes, there's arrogance. He didn't want to wait, and he ran to it, and he tried to seal the Dark One away. He tried to accomplish his goal from the very beginning, but in the act of touching and exposing Saidin to the Dark One, that's how obviously the backlash came on. He was able to form the seals on an imperfect seal, but not before the Dark One was able to taint all of Saidin. Okay, so there's answer number one. I don't think that was his plan. I think his plan was to seal. I don't think anybody could have stopped him from that, because Latra, obviously a very powerful speaker, a very convincing political leader of the time, was unable to stop him. Now, if he would have waited, and if they would have attacked in harmony with the Chosen Call, I think it would have just led to all of the One Power being tainted and the final and full destruction of the world. The shadow wins. Everything happened. The wheel weaves, brah. And what happened was, I won't say it was what's supposed to have happened, but what happened
But it stopped
in a way.
the most calamitous thing from happening. The
happened-
wheel stopped the destruction of itself, while not necessarily making the best thing happen.
What eventually ended up happened so that there could be preservation of the light and of humans.
All right, Andrew, you've had some time to think now, and Josh has had a lot of interesting things to say. What do you think?
Well, I have something that I did not know prior to this that I think will definitely change the way we think about how some of this happened. This is the reason I had turned the big light on, because I pulled out a book.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
I love that.
And this
always
is
love
The World of
pulling out
Robert
books.
Jordan's The Wheel of Time. This is the redone version with the newer cover.
Yes. Not to be
There's a-
confused with the big bad book of white art. Wait, hang on. The big
Yeah, that's
white
a-
book
that's
of
a-
bad art.
Yeah, which I have over there, but I just chose this one because it was a gift from Tom.
Indeed.
So shout out
yes.
to you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
A lot of this
Tom.
discussion, and in full transparency, I did not realize or even know this prior to looking at this right now. So to me, this is like a revelation of information. There was a short piece that Robert Jordan put out in 1996 called The Strike at Shao Ghul. And for the longest, this first edition draft of this story was available on the Tor website. And I think it is now only available at the Dragonmount website.
Okay.
But a revised version was put into The World of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time under the titles The Fall into Shadow and The Breaking of the World. The Fall into Shadow is chapter 4, and The Breaking of the World, I believe, is chapter 8. So chapters 4 and chapters 8. And it gives us some insight, because we have this conversation about the decision between the 100 Companions and the Fateful Concord, about them having this discussion at the same time, both options being available, and Lews Therin being impatient and just going for his own decision. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out they initially had a conversation. deliberated in the Hall of Servants about
Right.
what to do. And the fateful Concord won out, that they were going to wait for the Choden call and move forward with this. So I'm gonna start reading these excerpts as soon as I can figure out how to hold a book right.
That
Lews
is
Therin-
It's always an
the
exciting night
biggest
when Andrew
difficulty.
starts like bringing receipts. I know it's
Agreed.
going to be a good time.
So Lews Therin's plan was too rash, too dangerous, and no woman would take part in it. Since precise placement of the seals was widely thought to require a circle including 7 women and 6 men, all well above average strength in the power, the Concord apparently killed the plan. Work on the 2 huge Saint-Angreal, which would have the form of statues, rushed forward. So it looks like a victory for the Concord. But just as the Saint-Angreal were completed, disaster struck. The Terre-Angreal required to use them were being made at a place far removed from the Saint-Angreal because of the danger of uncontrolled resonance during the final stages. And that region was overrun by shadow forces under Samael. Fortunately, the Terre-Angreal themselves were hidden and the place where they were made destroyed just before the invasion. It had been a secret all along. So neither Samael nor anyone else for the shadow knew that any of the tools of the power were within their grasp. The side of the light still had the Saint-Angreal, but no safe way to use them. Without the Terre-Angreal, it was certain that even the strongest Aes Sedai would be burned out by the huge flow of the One Power, probably within minutes. Lews Therin argued again for his plan, acknowledging the risk, but saying that it was now the only chance. Yet Latra maintained her opposition. Belief in the danger of misplaced seals had spread, and more female Aes Sedai had pledged to the fateful Concord, even many who were nowhere near strong enough to qualify for the circle. Lara managed to have agents sent to attempt to smuggle the Axis Terre-Angreal out of shadow-controlled territory. Almost immediately on the heels of Samael's advance and well before Latra's agents had time to reach their objective, armies commanded by Demandred and Balal struck heavily, threatening the great Saint-Angreal. So we knew that the force of the shadow did lead attacks against the Saint-Angreal, because when you see your opponent building nuclear weapons and you know that once they're built, they're going to use them on you, you fucking stop them building nuclear weapons.
That becomes priority number 1, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So
No, priority number 2. Becoming Nameless is still priority number.
that's true.
Okay, fair. That's,
So up until now, like I thought about the whole thing as it was an either or, and it was a contest of, well, I just think my plan's better than yours, so I'm going to go with this. But apparently it was a case of, I still think my plan's better than yours, but I lost the discussion, the debate on the floor. And then what won the debate on the floor was rendered almost entirely impossible without a chain of potential sacrifices.
he enacted
so now-
emergency powers.
This is actually really interesting to me, because this is something I've never known. I've never actually read that information in the companion, and I thank you very, very,
Me neither.
very much for doing that. A, and B, this actually sets a lot of this in new light, because it's arrogance on both sides. It's
Well-
absolutely arrogance on both sides, because on one side you have Latra saying, let's wait, we have to do this, and Lews going arrogantly, no, we got to do something else.
Well-
But again, it's arrogance on both sides, because Latra's plan is no longer viable given their tools. And so Lews actually using his strength to assist in the recovery of the Terre-Angreal that would make this plan work is a good thing. Or Latra lending her and her factions power and grace to Lews's original plan, now that their plan is unviable, is also a good option. But the fact that neither of them will bend, neither of them will cave, is actually now the new problem. Because again, it sounds like Lews actually did sort of wait ish.
That's what I was about to say. It tells us that even though Lews Therin was opposed to the plan,
Yes,
he respected the governing strategy and the collective body of the Hall of Servants enough to say, okay, I lost this argument. We're not going with my plan. I don't like it, but I respect the decision. So
Well,
he
and-
waited.
The process.
exactly. But
Now it might have
again,
been 2 days. It might have been 2 weeks, 2 months. Who knows?
agreed. And that's again part of this discussion, is that now we have more knowns, but we also have enough unknowns that it's still a little hard to grasp 100%. But this actually now sounds like, really, again, I am not actually willing to give Lews Therin a pass, because he was arrogant enough to say, all right, fine, then we're doing my plan now that yours is unviable. But again, yours is unviable because I won't help make it work. Not because
Yes.
it's actually 100% unviable, but because I am not willing to throw my strength behind making your plan viable. But again, the same can be said on the other side. It's Latra absolutely standing there saying, my plan is unviable, but I'm not willing to go with yours because we can make my plan viable if you just get behind it.
God.
And so it's
You know what?
literally both
There's-
sides being too arrogant to work together on a single solution. not
There's
Sounds really
one
familiar.
side, right? Anyway,
there's still
Andrew.
more to it, because prior to, as me reading through and seeing if there's any of this that is relevant,
Mhm.
upon finally finding a keyword somewhere, I forgot where it was. I think it was under the Choden Call site or wiki entry.
Sure.
Yeah, it was, because I read an excerpt that says this. Like, if you go to the Choden Call wiki entry, there's
Sure.
a paragraph that talks about the access keys of the Choden Call lost to the advancing armies, and I was like, huh?
Yep.
And I went to it, and it references the strike at Shao Ghul, which is now what I said earlier in the book. But it also talks about that prior, like while they're having these discussions, like victory for the shadow in the perspective of the light, or known to the forces of light,
Mhm.
was the shadow was marching towards inevitable victory. It's exactly how it's written in this book.
Sure.
That the force of the shadow were marching towards inevitable victory. So you've got the force of the, and it says something about, I believe, because it was so sure, because the shadow was willing to lay siege and starve out and murder all of the people that resisted them to an extent that the force of the light could not counter, much less match the ferocity against the shadow. So
They
you've
didn't
got
have Handerstaff, motherfuckers.
exactly. Well, not
I
at least
got a
not the
hit
last
stat.
one. But you've got them having these conversations, and there's got to be continuous reports on battles. And I'm like, okay, well, how, if you have such incredibly valuable weapons being created here, where was your defending army? Where was it? Why wasn't this place heavily fortified? And you could say, oh, it was because it was like trying to be super secret. I'm like, yeah, but if you're talking about you can't make these things too close to the large scale, the full scale versions because of resonance, because of how much power you're using, then the Dreadlords are going to be like, huh, they're all over there. There's a lot of power being used over here. What the fuck's going on over here?
Sure.
And of course, like, they never find it. But it paints it that the force, that by the time this is a conversation that's happening, that the forces of the light are so badly beaten and bruised and bloodied and just gutted that they see the army of Samael march in. And Latra's like, well, the best I can do is covert action. Send in a small team of agents to get it back. And then they're sitting there watching this. Lews Therin's already like, no, it's too dangerous. There's no way. And then just to almost as if to illustrate the point of it's too dangerous, not one, but 2 more armies show up. And I don't
Mhm.
remember if Bilal was noted for his military strategy and leadership, but you know what 2 people definitely
Doesn't
were?
fucking matter. Yeah, right.
Samael and fucking Demand Dragon. Like,
Yep.
I can imagine, like, you're looking at this already lost situation where you're just like,
Yep.
we can't really do it. At best, we stalemate, and then reinforcements show up against the enemy. You're just like, there's like, you can't.
Yep.
And so, like, at that point, I already placed a fair amount of hindsight enabled blame. So to be fair, it is hindsight enabled
Uh-huh.
because
As
Latra's
all of this is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Latra's concerns were, well, the knowing that there's armies holding the place where the tools are, that's active knowledge for these people at this time.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
But Latra's concerns about what would happen and how vulnerable they would be, and putting in all of her faith into the Choden Call, is understandable. I definitely can understand it, and I don't think it's irrational.
Yes.
But I think it becomes irrational whenever you hold to a plan that is, in all aspects, impossible to realize. Not because it's not within the realm of reality. It's just so far beyond you, like, the collective strengths, capabilities to do.
Mhm.
Because
No, that's fair.
these objects are even hidden from the Aes Sedai. They don't know where they are. The only people that know where they are
That's true.
were there
That's true.
and probably died trying to hide these things away. So now they've got to go and find them while
almost
fighting
guaranteed.
off.
Yeah.
While fighting off 3 of the top dreadlords and their collective armies. I mean, it's crazy. So I have less understanding for Latra because it's kind of like, you see that this is wholly impossible. For all realistic and practical purposes, this is impossible. And instead of going with option B, as shitty of an option as it is, you still say, no, we can still use them.
Yes.
And to me, it tips the scales more into, honestly, what I already felt with Lews Therin, that it was
Sure.
less irrational, arrogant guy, and more like, this just makes the most sense. Because we got to remember too, like, Lews Therin didn't get to the status he is just by being really strong. Is that a big part of it? Absolutely. But the dude was also a genius in governance and military strategy and in the One Power.
Mhm.
So it's not like it's just, some like, muscle brain moron. It's not Goku standing at the front saying, let's have another tournament. It's Vegeta saying, fuck, there's nothing else we can do, Kakarot. We'll have to fuse because I literally can't do anything else. And I hate it.
And it's the last thing I goddamn want to do, but we gotta fucking do it.
Yeah. So, but to the original questions, I don't think that, had both sides of this come together and went to the board,
Mhm.
I don't think that they would have made a perfect seal on the board. I don't think it would have been
Sure.
perfect by any means, because I think the incorporation of the true source is what
Is key.
prevents the Dark One from being able to degrade the seals on his own prison. However,
But do you think it would have been a more perfect seal, or
Oh,
do
yeah.
you think that it would have protected either of the halves of the power from the Dark One?
yes,
Okay.
that's what I was getting at. I think they would have protected each other from the taint, because we already see Sidair work as the strainer, if you will, on Sidene to filter out the taint into Shao Ghul. And I think they can co-form that for each other. And the two of them together, I definitely, like we've seen in the entire rest of the series, would have worked better than one by themselves.
Nice. All right. So now I have a new question. And this is almost unrelated in some ways from the original question that was asked. But it is back to something that we talked about earlier. part of the reason that we went ahead and brought up this whole topic, part of the reason that we thought that this was interesting and what sort of spurred this being part of our topic schedule is there's 113 dudes, maybe 112 plus Lews Therin, maybe 113 plus Lews Therin. Little hard to say. We know that the physics, the rules of linking means that there is a limit to the number of people you can link of a particular sex. The way that you get around that limit on both sides is that you add 1 or 5 or 12, depending on how many you're trying to link, of the opposite sex. You add a Sidar user for every X Sidene users. You add 1 Sidene user for every X Sidar users. Great. And we seem to know these rules almost objectively. This does not seem to be a situation where Robert Jordan just said, hey, somebody's telling you this information. Is it right? No, it seems to be hard rules. So, we get to the boar, we get to Shaiol Ghul, and we know that there is a limit to the number of men that can link.
Yeah, the limit is 0.
Yeah.
Yes. So
do 113 men, possibly 114, stand at Shaiol Ghul and all channel at the same thing? Did they actually go ahead and convince the number of women that they needed to help the 100 companions link, even though there was another faction of female Aes Sedai that were like, no, we're not going to help you? Did they convince a smaller number of women to go against their faction to link with them? But for some reason in the link, Sidar was protected from what they were doing. Now we have a whole new question that is just on some levels mind-boggling when it comes right down to it. So Josh, take it away. You clearly want to say something and I want to hear it. Go.
So here's the thing, like, people are not a monolith, right? Correct. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care who you are. Yep. There is not a single demographic of more than one person in this world that shares views
on everything.
Yep. It just does not exist.
That's anyone the man with no clones.
Hey,
got him.
Hey,
no clones.
The fucking maidens meme.
He has a number of stories, Andrew. I'm pretty sure a handful of them involve clones. I've seen our Discord, and if you want to see our Discord, and if you want to see
those stories are only available on 2 conditions: late night conventional drunk conversations and only taints.
Yeah,
this clone brought to you by Kraken Rum. When you want to make bad decisions, Kraken Rum.
If you want to join our Discord and be a party to those particular things that Josh just brought up, get your ass in the Discord. You know how you get on Discord? You get an invite from our website, blacktowerpod.com. Just saying. Josh, keep going.
It does absolutely state, canonically, I will say this, it does canonically state that the 100 companions were a reactionary plan. Okay, so Lews Therin, he's participating in the Andrew's like, oh yeah. He's participating in the process. He's trusting the process. They're doing the thing.
Dodging every loophole, mimicking every detail.
They've got everything.
They're risking the bureaucracy.
And they're your clients. Okay, so Lews Therin does. He's participating, right? He's a good person. He's doing the things. He's doing what he should be, and he loses. He abides by the decision. Then got frozen again. Damn it. Okay, my internet connection sucks tonight. He participates in the public discourse. He's doing the thing. He loses. He's like, I don't like it. I'm going to keep working to prove my point, but it is what it is right now. We can't do anything about it. Cool. Great. 100%. Well, the keys get lost. Now he's got new footing with which to make his point. He's like, we can't depend on this. We have to act now. We also know Lews Therin, along with Aes Sedai Latra Sedai, that they are both very powerful speakers, both very powerful and prominent figures. And in this particular case, I cannot imagine that Lews Therin did not manage to win over at least a couple of women. Okay. He might have even gone so far as recruited maybe women who weren't fully Aes Sedai yet. We don't.
All right, Xfinity, I'm going to need you to get your shit
what
together.
that case maybe were
Right.
linked. What? Shit.
You're going to need Xfinity to get their shit together. Are you running the speed test on your stream deck still?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, and Josh makes a good point, because when it comes right down to it, the canonical things that we know and the rules that we know about Saidar and Saidin and linking seems to say that there is no power requirement for linking. It's just a binary. Can you channel or can you not channel? So it doesn't necessarily, I mean, we don't get any information as to whether that link is more powerful or not, the better that the people can channel in it. But it definitely seems like well, maybe we don't. Sorry. I should say that linking is absolutely not predicated on power. A person who can channel enough to be an Aes Sedai, or enough to be in the kin, or enough to be in, a wind finder, or enough to be an Aiel Wise One, all of them are capable of creating a link that works.
Yes.
Now, whether it works better or worse, the more power that the female channeler can use, or conversely, when you are linking with men, whether the link works better, the more power that, well, I mean, anyway, all of this is to say, Josh makes a really good point there of they had a particular threshold of people that could be used with the Chodan Call. There doesn't seem to be that requirement when you're just making a link, period. So now you're talking about Lews Therin being able to call upon a much larger group of, maybe not much larger, but a larger group of people who can now be in the link rather than necessarily the same people who could be used in the original plan. Sorry, keep going, Josh.
Well, all I was going to say is that you've got, so there's this possibility that he was managed to recruit a few, which gave him the ability to link 113. Because as we know, a woman or a Saidar user of the time can jump into the circle, link the two men, and then hop out and be like deuces, and then the link can sustain.
Nope.
No?
What you just said is not true.
You also cannot link 113 people together.
No.
See, and now we're going ahead and going into the wonderful things of receipts, and I'm awesome.
We want more numbers.
I do, but can I say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Because
a circle, a circle formation.
My
It
information
looks
because that
like
might color
as
what I say next.
As far as what it says on the wiki, and again, let's be clear, flags, the wiki is not always 100% correct, but they do get a lot of this information pretty well done. And so, A, thank you, wiki, for existing, just for starters. And B, thank you for being relatively good at what you do. According to this, it says that 72 is actually the highest link that you can form. And that actually involves
7 female channelers minimum.
Correct.
Assuming that it's even, because the example they give uses the addition of a male to add more female channelers.
Correct.
Assuming it works the same way
The
around
other
if you
way.
reverse the roles.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it's 6 because you can't make the initial 13. No, it's 7. Yeah, because you need the initial female channeler.
Exactly.
But we also see this exemplified in the books because when Damodred shows up in the last battle, he has a maximum link, and he is linked with 71 other people.
It's the full thing. Oh wow.
Yeah. So again, this now colors. Sorry, we'll go back to what you were talking about, Josh, with this information because I do still want to hear it. But again, it now brings into question. Demandred is an Age of Legends person. He is a Age of Legends channeler. So presumably, if they've actually figured out the rules to channeling in some ways,
I'm wrong.
Oh, okay.
Because one of the other rules for links is the number of men cannot exceed the number of women in the circle, unless it's 1 man, 1 woman, 2 men, 1 woman, or 2 men and 2 women. So it's much more. Like,
you'd
if you
actually have to get a shit ton more.
Yeah, because if you have a link of 72, then that means at least 37 of them have to be side air channelers or female channelers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you break the rules of a link.
Yep.
So that means if you take the 100 companions, 113, and you only have 35 men per link, you're looking at just over 3, like 3 1/4 links. So yeah.
Okay, so now this goes. I want to let Josh finish his thought now with new information, just sort of to be able to, if you want. But now we actually go back to the original question, because the original question here was, were they linked? And if they were linked, what saved Sidar from being tainted?
I am willing,
but again,
I am willing. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, but I was going to say, now we have an even additional question of, even if they were linked, according to the rules that we sort of know canonically, there would have had to be multiple links, period, because you can't actually get 113 men
at the very least
linked.
2.
More than that. Because again, it's now a question of,
at the very
there
least,
are additional rules. You'd have to do at minimum 3.
you have to do 3, and that would leave a fair number of channelers out without a link, male
Correct.
channelers without a link.
So now we go back to sort of the original question of, I am going to say now with this, with the information that we're getting, because again, I will admit I am bad at linking rules. I really am.
But
there's a way,
diagrams and math.
in all
altogether.
fairness,
Right.
there's a way to need fewer inherent female channelers than doing 3 to 4 separate links. Because
Agreed.
each one of those links would require 37 female channelers.
Mhm.
But if you pair each male channeler up with a female channeler, you only need 56.5, so 57 female channelers. And if you do 1 woman with 2 men, you need half that. So you can get away with about 26, 27 female channelers, actually.
Yes. But again, now you go back to the question of, is a link actually worth it? Now you go back to the question of, if you have to do minimum 4 links to actually get all 113, 114 companions involved. And that involves a shit ton of Sidar users. And then if you do it the other way, where you do 100 or you do 57 links, each involving a female channeler, that's still, any way you slice it, even if you do the smallest number of links, you now have the 100 companions having to channel in tandem. At least 4 links channeling in tandem, minimum. So now you're talking about the situation of, okay, if 4, why not 57? If 57, why not 113, 114 individual? And so now you go back to the question of, were they linked? If they were linked, what predicted Sidar? And what do we actually see in any way, shape, or form that mirrors the almost over 100 people all channeling in tandem? Because again, the thing here is that all of them, or the vast majority of them, would have to be connected to this one weave for the Dark One to get 68 of them in one stroke. Because we know that's a part of it.
You know, my defense
This is
is rapidly
crazy.
falling apart.
It's
crazy. Rapidly falling apart. I will still say I will call it more desperation and less arrogance.
Okay.
This is
I'm still down for that,
move.
but okay.
Because what we understand now, what I've just like, because again, linking has always been sort of a vague, nebulous kind of a thing for me. But knowing what I know now, knowing that there's no possible way that 113 men can link together without any women, approach the boar, attack it, and then receive the backlash. Because if there are women in the circle, then Sidar is a part of the weaves that are being directed at the Dark One. And therefore Sidar would, especially with how the women involved in the circle have to be so involved. There has to be dozens of women involved in this circle in order to make sure that it works, and to make sure that we have a circle. So I'm going to say that there is 113 men not linked. The only reason why you have this kind of a situation, I think, because again, we know that the 113 companions were, well, the 100 companions was a reactionary step. Lews Therin was like, I can't sit around and do nothing anymore. Desperation. I can do something about this. Arrogance. He gets 113 men, probably the only 113 men he can convince to go with him. If the conversation is that polarizing and that energized and that charged, this is probably the full representation of people who would join him. Or maybe it's just those who made the cut, those who were powerful enough to go. But I feel like 113 is kind of an arbitrary. I don't buy that there are 113 male Aes Sedai who can channel at this level in the whole world who will go. Like, I have to believe that there are some that were below the original power constraint.
Or maybe there's actually
But Lews Therin was like, if we all
150
work
men
together,
who,
teamwork will make this dream work. And my guess is that I was just going to say, my guess is that the formation of these seals requires some sort of contact with that out of time and space realm. And you've got teams, and what do we know about making Quendiar? It takes time, right? You can't just go, what, and make Quendiar. It takes time, it takes focus, and it takes effort. Now, add in whatever metaphysical fuckery they were doing to make them more than just Quendiar discs, to make them actually hold some sort of ethereal essence, to make some sort of space-time seal imperfectly. And you've got, my guess is that you've got a situation similar to Chernobyl, where you've got people on the rooftops shoveling bits of graphite back into the reactor core so that they can seal the damn thing. And you've got them saying, okay, you can work in 30-second shifts. Go out there, scoop as much as you can over the side of that building, and then get back here as soon as you can. In the same way, my guess is that you've got the 113 companions going up going, we know we're probably not going to make it through this, but we're doing this for the good of society. And they run up there and they all go, everybody reach out with Sidene at the same time. Everybody start weaving. We've got you on Quendiar duty, you on SEAL duty. These are the weaves that we're going to employ. And I think Lews Therin was very organized. I think he had a plan. I think he lifted the plan from what the original plan with Latro was. And he was like, we'll just do this ourselves and it'll be good enough and it'll work. But I think the reason why it still works to have the 113 companions and have all of them exposed to the taint on Sidene at the same time is that, like I said, you've got 7 seals. So I'm gonna, like I said, math.
113 doesn't
Not
actually
math.
go into 7.
Calculator.
But yes.
Let's go 1 divided by 7. Okay, so it doesn't really link up. 16.1. Okay, so you got 16 people per seal essentially. Probably not. Probably what you have is you have half of the people working on Quendiar, half of the people working on whatever weaves are required to make the Quendiar discs a seal. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. But the entire time they're working, they're in direct contact with this space-time outside place and being exposed to the Dark One. And in that exposure, they also expose Sidene as a whole, and that's how they receive the taint. Sorry, that was really long. Thank you for sticking with me on that.
No, it's solid.
If I had to guess, I would say, going off of that you had some groups of 9 and some groups of 10 working on the seals. And as they were all putting these in, because I don't think they could put one in place and then the other one in place and then the other one in place. I think these are all built and then all put in at the same time. And as the Dark One realized what was happening, he, in a last-ditch effort, lashed out at Sidene and the individuals that were actively putting the seals on, hoping that he can make them go mad in enough time to interrupt them doing the seals. Because if you have some teams of 9 and some teams of 10 across the 7 seals, that comes out to 68 people. If you do it, obviously, the correct dispersion. If you try to do it even, it's 9.7 per seal, which obviously can't really have 0.7 of a person that is still living.
Hold on though, interesting fact. If you divide 112 by 17 or by 7, you get an even number of 16. So if you've got 7 teams of 16 men and then 1 man in the middle tying it all together,
that probably is much
I
more
like
likely.
that. Well, okay, if I'm being actually completely honest, one of the things that I like about the 68 number is twofold. Number one, I actually think that if you have 113 channelers, you do not put them all on Quendiar seal duty. What you do,
as soon as I was like, yeah, that sounds right, then I'm like, wait, no,
is you put
or it may not.
5, 10, whatever like you actually feel like is a nice number and like what you feel like can make this happen and blah 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 on each seal, and then you leave all of your other ones to deal with the shadow spawn that's attacking you in Shayol Ghul.
Oh,
And the dreadlords that are attacking you in Shayol Ghul, because we absolutely know that the Dark One has power wielders, channelers, and whatnot coming to his aid. 100%, without a doubt. So now you have divide up the number whatever way actually makes sense kind of thing. And while 68 does not actually divide into 7 evenly, it's also a question of how many people were actually able to stave off the madness for any amount of time. Was it 65 people on each seal? Or not on each seal, sorry. Was it 65 people on the seals, which actually does go into 7? And all of them went mad, plus 3 people who were just a little out there already, and just like when Sidene got tainted, they were fighting dreadlords, so they weren't actually on seal duty at all, but they just went a little crazy, because that's what happens when Sidene gets tainted. Or was it 70 people, 10 people on each seal, and 2 of them were actually able to stave off the madness for a week, or a day, or an hour, or whatever, because it says immediately. And immediately is a questionable statement already. I mean, again, it's not, because immediately isn't when you just use the word. But again, what do you call immediately in this case? Do you say that within 12 hours they all went insane and so immediately counts? Does it mean literally exactly at the moment that they put in the seals, all of them went nuts? Like, again, now you're going ahead and saying, what does immediately in history mean versus immediately in the moment mean?
And this is why I like the Chernobyl comparison.
Sure.
Because those men were irradiated almost instantly. Now, did they start feeling the effects immediately?
No.
I mean, some of them lasted a day, some of them lasted a week, but some of them lasted a couple minutes.
Yeah.
They all succumbed to radiation sickness. So,
everybody's
with
body
radiation,
is
it's also a measure.
Everybody's,
With radiation, it's also a measure of grays. Like radiation isn't like, bam, you suddenly get like the entire dose at one point. Like you can if it's very, like the Demon Core, which are very instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
But with Chernobyl, they weren't like, there's only this max amount of radiation and you'll just get it all immediately. It was absorbed over time. Yeah. Because the way you defeat radiation is distance and time. If shielding is not available.
So you vector radiation?
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely.
Oh yeah!
Stop it! I hate you. Do not bring that horrible set of movies into this.
I mean,
I didn't do shit. I used the definition. You're the one who brought in a character, you dickhole.
I don't think there was any ambiguity to immediate. I think it was immediate.
Sure, and that's also totally possible. Yeah.
So because like if it was like. If they told the story that like everybody or most of them like grew insane rapidly after it, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, they say immediately based off this like kind of generic historical context that really we shouldn't use because it's disingenuous to the meaning of the word. But it's 68 immediately, and then slowly over time, all the other male channelers across the world up until, the cleansing of Sidene. Yeah, no, I had another idea and I forgot what it was.
That's okay. Real quick, I actually want to ask a binary while you think about that. And you can expound on this a little bit. I think all of the 113 companions absolutely went insane. I don't think any of them was actually spared at all. But I'm curious as to your thoughts as to whether there was any of the 100 companions, 113, that actually was able to stave off madness in some way until their death without necessarily going insane, as we call it? Do you think there was any of the 100 companions who made it to a steading, or who went off and did something else, or was crazy resilient to go ahead and be able to get to, Dammer Flynn age without going back? Like, I think none of them made it. I think all of them went insane within a relatively short amount of time, if not actually immediate backstroke very soon after. Do
Yes.
you think
Absolutely.
yes, or do you think that there were any who made it? Josh, sounds like you're an emphatic yes. Andrew, do you think any of them made it?
Oh yeah, I think there's at least a handful that either survived for a while afterwards and slowly went. Because I disagree. I don't think all of them went insane immediately. I think the
Well, no,
insanity...
not immediately. It was 68 immediately, and then the rest, I think, took a year or two. I don't know, maybe at the outside. That's my thing. That like a year or two, they lasted that long, but they all, given their proximity to this backstroke, did actually go insane. Again, not immediately. We have the 68 immediately, but I think all 100 or all 55 additional that you have there did eventually go insane within a relatively short amount of time. That's my position, and that's sort of what I'm asking.
Sorry, that's not what I interpreted from what you
sure
said. When you said all of them went insane, I was like, not immediately.
Yeah, no, not immediately.
But yeah, I mean, well, we pretty much, like, it's almost a given fact that if they weren't gentled and then alt F forward out of life, or if they didn't die in a fight or battle or something like that, that they all did go insane, like all male channelers, period. So, because at the same time, you do have Latra, who's now leading the Fateful Concord, trying to stop the world from breaking now. And so they're going to actively be using these, previously rarely used forbidden weaves of ripping away a person's ability to channel. I think at best there were probably some male channelers that survived for like a very small handful that made it to like a steading or something and were able to stave off the effects of madness for a short while. But again, just like the radiation example, if you know that there is a leaking nuclear reactor in the building next to you, and you're constantly on the edge of, well, it's not going to make me feel radiation sickness now, but I'm definitely accruing far more radiation than is healthy over time. Eventually, you are going to succumb to and die from radiation poisoning.
Yep.
Same thing with the taint, with the caveat of the more you stick around radiation, does it make you want to be around radiation more? But the more taint that you absorb, the less kind of inhibition you have towards not channeling. The more you just grab it, because we see this from Rand. There's times where he's holding his maximum amount of Sidene and doesn't even realize he's holding Sidene.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is inevitable, because we know that there is that incessant need that nobody that can channel will ever just willfully not channel. Like it's basically known as an impossibility, for all intents and purposes. Is it realistically possible? Sure. The amount of control and need, there's probably like 3 people in all of recorded history that maybe managed to never channel. Like it just is what it is. Like, it's
statistically insignificant. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and whenever people try not to channel, even when they see stuff happen, it seems like their body at some point reaches a maximum where it just happens, whether they realize it or not.
Yep.
I feel like the big, like, sort of deviation with my analogy of using radiation exposure is that you are only exposed to the taint on Sidene when you are channeling Sidene. Or more probably, if you want to get real semantic about it, when you are holding saidin. Essentially, you can, as Andrew just pointed out, it's feasibly possible to just go, cool, I'm not going to channel. And there are people who did that. They went into the steading and said, I will live my life away from saidin. And you know what? I'm going to say right now, hot take from the Sword on the Hail. I'm going to say there are men who lived and died in the steading and never came out and just went, you know what? I don't
How
trust
many of
it.
them? How many of them were too worried about? They saw what happened to their friends and said,
Exactly.
instead of going back out there and going that way, I'm going to go out on my terms while I'm cognizant of what's going on.
And alt F4 themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
Or
I
as
will
Canada
say
calls it, made.
that,
That
so
wasn't a compliment, Canada, by the way.
the difference being,
Sort out your VA, you fucker.
if we're going to refer to the taint on saidin as sort of a source of radiation, it would be like having a piece of radiation in a lead box. And then every once in a while, opening that lead box and going, radiation, and then closing the lead box again, just to get your fix. Because you need.
That's funny, because there were people that did that basically.
To go into the steading and
Right,
they're
There
like,
like
have
fucking
always
anymore.
been people, yes.
Well, it's
Jump
like,
out.
what's your medicine? Oh, it's radium water. It's literally radium dissolved in water.
Yeah.
Like,
So I will
Oh.
say, kind of wrapping this up,
Mhm.
the 100 companions, I as with many episodes, I learned a few things about the metaphysics of the Wheel of Time, which kind of colored my perceptions of kind of how these things go, kind of what happened. Was Lews Therin arrogant? I'm going to say yes, but there was also a healthy dose of desperation in that man as well. Does that excuse him? No, absolutely not. It does not. You make, if I make a choice today that even if I think it's a good choice, but it has negative impact on my future, I'm still accountable. Just because I couldn't see the ramifications, the negative impact, the consequences of those actions through, does not excuse me from the collateral damage done to myself and, God forbid, others in my life in the future. That's why when I make a decision, I must own it. I must say, you know what? I made that decision and damn it, it was a bad decision. And now I must make amends. Lews Therin didn't get the chance to make amends. He was driven insane, and his only moment of clarity was gifted, quote unquote, gifted to him by
Billy Zane.
I mean,
Yes.
Shamael.
Yes.
who brutally healed the man just enough to know what he had done before, essentially having a psychotic break under
That's
the
actually-
collapse of what he had done, of
That's
all
actually
the
in my healthcare plan.
damage he caused.
I have it signed
Yeah.
with lawyers and doctors that if I ever get really sick, that Billy Zane has to come to my bedside, hold my face in his hands, and just repeat, be healed.
I love the story. I love, again, it's Robert Jordan does this really amazing thing where he says, I'm going to take these impossible fantasy sci-fi scenarios and I'm going to boil them down to just humans doing the best they can, and sometimes being really bad at it.
Except for the
Was
OG.
Lews Therin a villain? Absolutely not. Was he a person trying to do what he thought was the best? Absolutely. Was that road to hell paved with good intentions? Yes, indeed it was.
All right.
I'll go next. I am going to double down on my defense of Lews Therin. I vehemently disagree on any aspect of arrogance in Lews Therin's mind. To me, it doesn't match the character, it doesn't match the station. And given that, like, he wasn't just like one of the world's top leaders, he was literally that bitch. He was the top leader. He was the head honcho. Where arrogance can be seen, I see decades of experience and an immeasurable amount of confidence, sheer will, and determination, where he has looked at this situation, seen that how dire the situation is for everybody, because he feels responsible essentially for the free world at this point. And he sees how dire it is, and he sees that every second that they stand in their hull, amongst their luxury, amongst their safety in numbers, amongst their strength and stature, that meanwhile, everyone from king and queen to noble family to peasant is suffering and dying and being murdered at the hands of the shadow. And they have been for years now. And it is inevitable that they cannot stop it without a Hail Mary play. And even with that, knowing that the alternate option is not yet ready, Lews Therin still respects the code of law, the discussions in the Hall of Servants. And to me, a man acting on arrogance does not do that. He says, fuck you, you do what you want to want. I'm going to go do this because I know this is right. And he doesn't do that. He waits. And whenever the other alternate plan is no longer viable and possible, is whenever he re-attacks the conversation and literally looks at the entire body and says, we listened, we waited. It is now too late. That option is no longer possible. We have to go with plan B. We can't do anything else. And it seems like his opposing faction is stuck in denial, stuck that this plan can still be viable, despite years of experience fighting the forces of the shadow, fighting their previous friends who are now turned dreadlords, knowing just how capable they are, and the fact that across all fronts, they are being pushed back unequivocally. And they still say, no, we're not going to do that. And to me, Lews Therin is not the one that acts out of arrogance. Latra is the one that acts out of arrogance. So I'm going to say that Latra is the arrogant one, but I'm going to agree that there is going to be desperation in Lews Therin's decision. Because how do you not feel desperate when the world is literally caving and crumbling around you? And there's no other option. There's no other viable option. And nobody, except for these 112 to 113 other people, will even really entertain what you're saying. So learning what I've learned now about the timelines and that kind of stuff, about how exactly everything happened, I'm doubling down that Lews Therin made the rational call. And had Latra done the same, and either whether it was pride, whether it was arrogance, whether it was ignorance, whatever it was, we don't know. Or whether it was just pure fear to go and face the shadow directly. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that they were just scared. I have a hard time believing that. But I'm not going to rule it out. That had they not done that, then well, we wouldn't have a story, to be honest with you. I don't think, or not nearly as exciting of one. But I also think it's interesting that this schism between the fateful Concord and the 100 Companions, I think, is the second age starting, even before the breaking of the absolute division between male and female Aes Sedai. I think this is what starts that crack, and the breaking just finishes it through. But to the chief question of the episode was, were the 100 Companions linked? I'm going to say in any capacity, absolutely not. Not at all. I do think that the taint was related to how much of Saidin you were channeling at the time of the counterstroke, because the more you're pulling in, the more open you are to being attacked, I believe, because you're pulling in more Sidene, so therefore you can pull in more taint. And that initial blast, I think, definitely targeted or got the people that have been channeling the most at the time. And I think we had a handful of people that survived, at least 2 or 3 years beyond going through in the steadings and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's my final thoughts. Stop hating on Lews Therin. Place your hate where it belongs, in Galwin and Latra.
As God intended.
Join us
As
next week
creator
for more
intended.
on that.
Stinger. All right, I'm gonna make my thoughts brief. I agree with both of you. I am the middle ground on this particular episode because I do absolutely 100% think that Lews Therin thought that he was justified after Latra's plan became unviable to do what he did. And I think that there is an amount of arrogance there, even though I absolutely agree with Andrew that when it comes right down to it, I think that when your plan becomes viable or unviable and you double down on it, that's on you more than anyone else. Absolutely. And so I'm going to say that everybody was at fault, but it is also interesting that we see the aftermath and we also have so little information about what was going on in the Age of Legends and what they could do and what they were doing and what they were capable of, that I think that we will talk about this on another episode, but I think the wheel got involved, and like it says in the Bible a number of times, God hardened their heart or whatever the case may be, and that if Latra had actually gone with them, the whole world would have been fucked. I think that if they had actually done Lews Therin's plan with the women, it would have been both sides of the one power that would have been tainted, and everything would have been butthole. Like, it would have been terrible. And so I think that it is actually a creator getting involved, wheel weaves bruh situation of Latra not coming with them. And so yeah, I think it was just no good options. That's my thought, is no good options, and that Lews Therin chose the worst of the best of the no good options, and gets a lot of credit later on from all of these surviving female Aes Sedai, who then scapegoat Lews Therin a shit ton afterwards and give Latra a pass for her not actually doing anything. Because the people who aren't insane in this case write the history books. But yeah, so
Bias, fake news.
Right. So again, I am also down to the original thing about the episode. I don't think they were linked. I think they absolutely were just 113, 112 people doing their best, standing there channeling on their own. And I actually think that was more of a problem. Anyway, so
113 dudes channeling 5 feet apart because they're not sane.
There it is.
There it is. No
I love
taint.
it.
Wait.
Thank
yes,
you.
Shit.
Thank you for being here, for listening, for being amazing, for being awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for leaving your comments below and telling us what we missed. Telling us
Which was a
things
lot.
you'd like us to discuss in the future.
Please do
Thanks
that.
for conducting yourselves in a manner commensurate with members of the Black Tower. We thank you, and we hope that you've enjoyed this weekly dose of taint. We hope that you leave here just a little bit more insane than you were when you first got here. From all of us here at the Black Tower, I have been your storm leader, Josh.
And I am going to revel in the newfound knowledge of the chronology, because that's how you say that word, of the events of the strike at Shao Gul. And I have been your battle leader, Andrew.
And I am going to remind you to check out our TikTok for all of the cosplay goodness that is going on with our Storm Leader. Also, to let you know that clearly you can also be an Ashaman if you go ahead and buy $400 worth of fabric and want to kill yourself by going ahead and doing this process.
Hey, he's talking about me.
Or maybe just buy yourself a nice black coat from somewhere that makes black coats.
What I'm doing.
But any way you look at it, you can also be an Ashaman. So check out our TikTok for ways to be crazy Ashaman.
And with Rusty's and an insane amount of luck, you too can look like me. Ka-chow.
I'm pretty
Gotcha.
sure that Josh is actually tainted, which is why he's doing this. But anyway, go check out our TikTok. It's fun. It's awesome. Josh is actually doing wonderful, amazing things. And you can also check out Whiskeys with Andrew, your by Jan Mahale. And I have been your flag leader,
Banner,
Daniel. Dragon Banner leader, Daniel. And from all of us here at the Black Tower, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being awesome. You guys are what makes us tick. You guys are what makes the Black Tower what it is. We hope that you're having a wonderful morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good good night.
And for all intents and purposes, work together, you fucks.
Always running the show.
In the tower, you can bring your pain. In the tower, you can feel the strain.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting